I would like to welcome the speakers or the panelists for this occasion. Dr. Anupama, please give her a big round of applause. So, Dr. Anupama is a mission director at Biocon Foundation. She's been a good friend for a really long time now. We won't get into detailed introductions, but we will touch upon when we are talking. Our next speaker is Dr. Shweta Raghavan, again a very good friend. She's the head of innovation strategy and government affairs at the Royal Society of Chemistry. She's also a professor at St. Joseph's. Our next speaker is Dr. Shannon Oslin. She's a very renowned scientist, founder of Echo Network and a Fulbright scholar. We have Bhavya. Bhavya has a amazing profile. She is the first female territorial army officer, rather Lieutenant Bhavya Narsimurthy. Please give her a big round of applause. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, before we start, just to give a little bit of background about why we thought we would have this event and why is it important to have something like this, right? So all of us, men, women, or anybody, we have a preconceived thought when it comes to whatever we are doing. We are prejudiced with a lot of thoughts. Our thoughts about women are something like that. So when we think of certain characters, certain women, we think, okay, they are like this, they are going to be like this, they are supposed to do like this. So the event is around that. Women at leadership positions. When we look at women at leadership positions, again, we have a lot of preconceived thoughts. Is our understanding right? What are we thinking? What should we be thinking is one part of it. The other part, what we want to really touch upon is what is happening in their life when they are women leaders. What have they been thinking? What have they been going through? How have they been living this life of a leader as a woman, both on the work front and the home front? So those are the points what we want to touch upon. Without taking too much of time, I would hand it over to the leaders here and ask them to quickly introduce about them and what they have been doing and what got them till this stage. Thank you.
Just a brief intro. So good afternoon, and as Bhaskar had mentioned, I am the mission director at Biocon Foundation. I'm a physician by training, and so it wasn't a conscious decision getting into CSR. I kind of meandered my way into this vocation. I was interested in public health, and so I did my master's, PhD. After that, for the longest of times, I was looking out for a job. It was really difficult after the PhD, and luckily I had a meeting with Dr. Shetty, and that's when he suggested that why don't you join my team, and you should look at our telemedicine program, and that kind of set off everything. And from there, I think it's been a story of growth. I've risen through the ranks, and I headed CSR at Narayana Health, and then I've moved on to Biocon Foundation. It's a much wider landscape here at Biocon Foundation. We work on various domains, and I'm so happy, the Bhaskar, that we get to interact with splendid organizations such as ARTPARK and Indian Institute of Science. It's been amazing. It's the most amazing part of my journey. Just meeting folks such as you all, seeing this place today. It was amazing to just see the kind of innovation that's happening here in this very space. So, I'm going to say applaud you all, for your efforts, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you. It's a real honor, Dr. Anupama. I think I met you at Narayana probably in 2016, if I'm not wrong, nearly 10 years. You have been ever inspiring. Rather, I jumped into public health much later in 2019. Prior to that, have been a medtech entrepreneur. You have been an inspiration from then on. Thank you. Dr. Shweta.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for making the time to be with us here today. Bhaskar and Akshata, thank you so much for having me here. I am much like you. I live with my best friends, who I call mom and dad. I have a little sister who thinks she's older than I, so I'm used to being bossed around. I also have a little brother from another Siberian mother. He's a husky, just clarification, nothing to do with my dad, and his girlfriend. So that's my family, just a regular Indian family, everything that goes with the turf. I think I've always been somebody who's gone with the flow. And it began with, being in class 12 and not really knowing where to head from here. The whole pressure of doing engineering and medicine. And I said, you know what, I'm not doing what others are doing. But I really didn't know what else to do. So I remember opening my marks sheet and I said, oh, well, the highest mark I've got is in biology. So this is what I will pursue. So that's how my decision was made, when I finished my 12th class. So then I go on, do my biochemistry, and then I'm like, maybe I want to go abroad. So then I start looking for like degrees that match my interest. So I think every step of the way, it's more about making a decision based on what I'm good at, as well as what I might enjoy at that stage in my life. And that's really brought me here, through going through a fully funded PhD and then having that experience living abroad, learning different cultures, understanding how they work and how that might fit into our own culture back in India. Transitioning from a hardcore laboratory experimentation scientist to a policymaker, where I took in a lateral entry, went into civil services, started working in that field. So from paper to practice, as you would say. It was a hugely transforming journey, because it's one thing to catch bugs and tame your rabbits and ensure that your weighing scales are all balanced, but it's an entirely different story when you're actually working with community. You realize how much of the work that you do is not actually ready for use. And that's where I developed a lot of skills on implementation science, on designing complex interventions that suit purpose, that are able to translate evidence-based science into practice. So that is what sort of brought me to this stage where I now head strategy, innovation, and government affairs in South Asia for the Royal Society of Chemistry. It's a wonderful job where I get to work in the innovation space, working with academicians, bringing their ideas together with the policymakers and government, and understanding how you implement it, and also directly interact with community. So the projects span everywhere between improving pharmaceutical products like affordable diagnostics, new drugs, all the way to building climate resilience, finding better materials, advanced materials that are sustainable, are able to help protect our environment and reverse all the damages that we've done. So that's my piece, and he's already told you my name, Shweta Raghavan, and I hope you'll now remember my story as well.
Great. Thank you, Shweta. I think, like I mentioned about Anupama, I think I met you in the war room at BBMP. So, one thing which really drew my attention is the passion with which you wanted to collect COVID data and how persistent you were with respect to the work what you wanted to do. While we were all fighting a different battle, you wanted to identify a different thing and come back with your own study and analysis. So even though we did not treat you really well,
No. I wouldn't say that. It was an uphill battle to get the data out of
I
you.
agree.
But to be honest, it was your data that actually helped me predict. In fact, mine was the only COVID model that said third wave will not be dangerous, but you will get a vaccine resistant mutant. So you had a part to play in my modeling. Thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Shannon, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm Shannon, and I'm not from India. I grew up in a pretty small farming community in upstate New York, and I've lived on 3 continents. And the reason I moved to India in 2014 was that I was an ecologist. I became an ecologist, and I came to India to study one of the most biodiverse regions on the planet. India has everything: deserts, mountains, rivers, lakes, oceans galore, right? It's a hugely biodiverse country, and I hope to learn from this country how we could better work together as humans and nature to preserve our future. And I loved working here, but I had a number of life-changing experiences throughout my life, and one of them happened while I was doing research. I was working in Sikkim in the northeast in the Himalayas in this really beautiful rhododendron valley, and there was yaks and sunbirds and butterflies, and it was really like heaven on earth. And we were studying pollination and high altitude issues, and then the next year we came back and the entire valley was gone. So every bush, every tree, every sunbird was gone, and it was actually being made into a parking lot, which is an old Joni Mitchell song, right? And I sat down in the dirt where I had been doing research the year before, and I started crying, right? And I realized as a scientist that I had a choice. Either I could continue studying biodiversity and publishing papers about it and just watching it disappear, or I could find a way to work with others to better preserve those ecosystems along with communities for the future. So that decision really propelled me to actually end up leaving academia, leaving a tenure track position, which still horrifies most of my colleagues. And I founded, with the principal scientific advisor to the government of India, something called the ECHO Network. So the premise behind the ECHO Network is exactly this. It's how do we bring people together from different sectors, from different walks of life, farmers, artists, scientists, technologists, people like Bhaskar as well, and how do we bring them together, and how do we get them to work better together and share information that can benefit the lives of communities and make communities more sustainable. And that's what we're doing. And we are now 2,500 people strong across 46 countries. So it's been a really, really thrilling exercise to see that something that came to me out of a moment of immense pain has actually become a successful dream of so many people across the world. So I feel very, very honored to be part of this experience. So.
Great, Shannon. Thank you. It's always great to meet you, and the kind of work what you're doing, which is revolutionary, bringing in the community together, bringing in science to common people. It's not easy. So been impressed from the day I met, maybe around 3 years back, right? So from then on, thank you for being here. Bhavya, over to you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to appreciate Bhaskar. You have put in a very diverse panel. I'm so glad to meet you all and you all. Because I get to see a very different audience on a daily basis. I'll tell you why. About myself, I'm from Bangalore and born and brought up here. I did my engineering in electrical and electronics from MS Ramaiah Institute of Technology. And then I did my master's from Columbia University. I shifted to public policy. My master's was in public policy. And then I was working for the UN Women in New York, United Nations Population Fund in Egypt, and UNICEF with Nepal on various gender-based violence and malnutrition programs. Then I came back to India because since my childhood, I always wanted to become a politician. Although I would not be talking the side of me, which is a politician. I belong to a political party. I'm also a general secretary of the state and the spokesperson. And currently, I have a policy consultancy, a company, also a foundation. And what Mr. Bhaskar addressed me as the lieutenant, I got commissioned as a lieutenant last year as a part of Indian Army. So territorial army, if usually people are not aware of it, and you're all youngsters, you need to know. So I'm just going to explain what that is. That's an opportunity for professionals like us to be a part of Indian Army as well. So every year for 2 months, you will be serving in Indian Army as an officer. So the recruitment happens just like a regular officer. You will be paid like a regular officer, like only for those 2 months that you serve there. If you're interested, you can serve more. But because we have our own profession, every year we are required to serve there for 2 months, and you will be getting your promotion. Until you retire, you will be treated just like a regular officer, army officer. Right now, I got commissioned as a lieutenant. So this is about me. And thank you, Bhaskar and Akshata for organizing this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bhavya. I think it's an honor to have you here. It's not easy. You made it sound very simple to be the lieutenant in a territorial army. I gave exams twice, I did not clear.
Yeah, I gave exams, SSB, yeah. One of the toughest in the world is what they say in the recruitment of army.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Big round of applause, guys, for the panel there. Okay, quickly jumping into the questions, right? So I have put together around 10 questions. Rather, Akshata has put together a lot more questions. And beyond that, the team here also shared a lot of questions. So there are a lot of questions. I won't get into all of them, but some of the important ones, what we want to really touch upon. All of you guys have been in significantly important leadership positions, right? So while it is really tough to get onto leadership position for both men, women, whomsoever, right? So, but once you are at that position, it is very different from what we really expect. So, becoming a leader is one. Once you get onto the pedestal, it feels very different from what you are expecting. Why I say that and what I want to really ask is, most leaders, they say they feel very lonely once you're there. At the summit, if you feel lonely, there is no fun. Is it the same and is it different kind of lonely for women? So I would seek your opinion on that and we will dwell upon it a little more.
I'm the opening batsman. Okay. So, I think it's a great question, Bhaskar, and it's definitely very real. So just before coming here, I was just going through some stats, in fact, and what I found in the Harvard Business Review, also HBR, was that loneliness is definitely there. In a short, snapshot survey of CEOs, they found that newly minted CEOs, 70% of them experience loneliness. And even in established CEOs, 50% of them have gone through loneliness at some point in time. As for me as a woman, I wouldn't say as a woman, but more or less as a leader. I've risen through the ranks. I've been at an executive level, the lowest, category in any organization. And from there on, I've risen to become head. And then, of course, that's how it's been. And each time I rose, I saw that my social circle was dwindling. You know, it is like that. It does happen. And that's one of the realities. And as you grow higher, there is a certain barrier that you consciously put. It's not unconscious, but there is, you establish it. That's the truth out there, and especially so during performance appraisal time. I don't know how many of you all have gone through performance appraisal, but that's the worst period. You're totally isolated because everybody is viewing you with a lot of angst, that hoping they'll get a good performance appraisal from you all. But anyway, jokes apart, what I'm saying is it's very real, the loneliness. And how would you address it? Because I just don't want to talk about my problems. I don't see it as a problem per se, but it's something that you need to consciously address. It is there. And how do we address it is, I have my own formal and informal networks. So these are women that I lean on to within my organization who are at the same level, and we kind of discuss, okay, this is what's happening and how have you been addressing this in your unit. Then informally, yes, I do have another network there that I lean on. That's first is my family. For definitely my family is a stress buster. But apart from that, I have other women who are my friends and who are, for example, here I have a huge bunch of, women who are there, who know what the pains are, when you reach at that level. And it is great to discuss this, so this is just, I would say my, immediate thoughts on loneliness, at least. And it's very real and you should definitely address it at the earliest. That's what I believe, yeah.
Check. I think the numbers are quite scary if you look at it.
The numbers, yeah, I was really
70%
surprised.
is, yeah.
And this coming from Harvard Business Review, so I won't refute it. There are studies. I don't know if they've done it here in the Indian context, but I'm sure there must be something like that out there. I didn't have a lot of time to sift through Indian data sets, but yes, C-suite level, loneliness is definitely an emotion to kind of recognize and also have a strategy in front of you by which you can address it in a much more proactive manner. Yeah.
Interesting. So again, Shweta, you can respond to the same question while an extension to the question what I could gather from what Anupama is saying is also it becomes really important to have your circles, right? So have your circles, and the social circles keep on shrinking as you grow up in your leadership position, and you accept it or don't accept it. Unfortunately, even today in India, at least, a lot of organizations have very few number of women at the leadership position. So having that kind of a social circle where you can reach out to, you can have access to, you can talk about all your challenges may be difficult, right? So what have you seen? What's your experience?
So I have a slightly different take on this. See, when you have the entire room to yourself, why do you bother about the crowd? Bring your own crowd in. That would be my stand. So my journey has been very unique in that while I was doing my PhD, I floated my own community interest organization, It's called Scientists and Co. At the point I was doing my PhD, there were several immigrants and war refugees who were coming into the UK. And one thing I realized that was that they were not being repatriated very well, and they were not being integrated into the society as much as we'd like to, especially the younger people. So I started this off to support them integrate into the society, teach, open new careers that do not have very high demand, because law and engineering is always overcrowded. So we opened up science and arts. So when I started building this, I'm already just a PhD student. So I've had the experience of leading something from the front. I've done everything from supplying water bottles to the campsite all the way to drawing up the strategy, etc. So for me, my career graph has always been running in parallel, where I've held not a leadership but a responsible position, is how I would put it. So leadership is associated often with power, but very rarely with responsibility. So when you shoulder the responsibility, you learn quite early. And in my case, it was when I was just 22, 23. I learned what it takes to lead a group, lead an organization, grow and scale it. So I could, when I got into the workforce, I could relate to the problems of the people sitting above me, but also beneath me. So what happens is, when you keep rising the ladder, your responsibilities are so overburdening that you don't make time to keep these circles alive. It's not that the circle shrinks, you allow it to wither away. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that you keep your own crowd. You know who your cheerleaders are, but equally you should also know who your critiques are. Don't distance them, because they're the ones who will come and give you a knock on your head and say, here is where you're faltering. And that, I feel, is a lot more important than the cheerleaders. Because one thing is, as a leader, when you make a decision, you want to believe that you're right, that you've considered everything. It's not humanly possible. So, one, try to keep connection with your circles. It will change, it will shrink, people will come and go, but don't disconnect yourself from the ground realities. Once in a while, step into the canteen. Once in a while, step into the hot desking area. Sit with them, spend some time. I do that even now. I'm not averse to carrying a banner to an event. I might be the chief guest at it, but I'm quite happy serving tea. I'm willing to do everything that takes to complete the job at hand. So leadership is not just about leading from the front, but also from the behind, allowing your team to grow, because their growth is automatically linked to yours. And the last piece of message I'll give you is, don't chase perfection. We're not going to be able to achieve that. So this loneliness comes from the pursuit for being exceptional and perfect. Strive for excellence. That is achievable. When you pick something, try and make sure you give it your best. In fact, go beyond your best and do it in a way where it's very consultative and collaborative. Because, like I said, it's not possible for one human to know everything.
So I just wanted to follow up on what Shweta was saying is about how it gets harder as you increase in leadership position. And just to add another aspect to that, there's only, I think it's about 12% women in leadership positions in science and technology in India. So 12%. Okay, so that's a very lonely place to be as a woman. Okay, so that's one. But another thing is that the narrative that exists, and this is not just here in India, this is across the world, is that we have to help women, right? We have to help women. So we provide programs for women. So at young, earlier levels of your career, there's lots of women-led programs to help them to get scholarships, to go through school, to maybe help them with breaks, because there's this thing that they need help. But once women get to a certain level of success, right? Maybe because of some of the help that they've received, that help disappears, and that there actually might be a perception that they don't need any sort of assistance in any way, right? Which could be not even financial. It could be like just networking or connections. And so I don't know why I became a robot. Okay, so I don't know if that is the. I feel that it has to do with the fact that you're no longer perceived as helpless, and that suddenly you have everything you need. Whereas, and so those networks do tend to start to disappear. And I think it's not always just because you're busy. I think you're right about that. But I think it's also because there's a perception that you've done enough. You're successful. And I think that people who come in with networks who have perhaps a little bit more privilege. So this is not only a statement on women, but anyone who has a little less privilege when they start out. Maybe they're coming from a minority or they're coming from a different socioeconomic class. They don't come in with those networks. And so they don't have an ability to retain them the way you do if you come in, right? You know, having an established network that's people that you carry throughout your life. And I think this is a huge barrier to women and one of the reasons why we don't have more leaders at this level, because people just kind of just assume that you just, you know, you're fine. Everything's fine for you. And it's not, right? At the leadership level, you also, I mean, all of us would, I think, agree. It's not like you're completely fine on your own and everything. You need people to talk to, you need to be connected. You know, you have to still continue to advance not only your career, but your professional development, your personal development, your emotional development, and that needs people. So I think this is a really big barrier that still exists, and I don't think it's just here. I think this is kind of something across the world that's existing, because it's this bias, and I think you'll probably talk about bias that we have, that we need to help women at levels where they're helpless and not where they're, you know, where they're really successful. So
Thank you. A lead to the next point itself, which I wanted to discuss, is where you left off, Shweta, is as women, rather, it happens at home also for me, right? I have been brought up by a single parent all my life, and she's been a working woman. We have no excuse. As soon as mom comes home, I'll ask her, "Can you serve dinner?" Because I have also come from work, but she's also come from work. So we expect women to deliver everywhere, right? So be at work, be at home, and we want them to be okay with everything. So, and we expect all women to be just super women. This is a problem, I don't know, not just with men but also with women. So I've seen my sisters or others, like even they treat other women the same way, right? So ladki hai, kar sakti hai, kind of stuff, right? So you can do it. You come from work, but you are the wife, you are the daughter, you're supposed to do it. And this is a big problem, is what I see, right? So this is a big problem in the society. This is a big problem in the way we think as a society when we look at women. Why do we think that women can just do it all? Or is it really true that women can do it all, right? So we can maybe go from that side to this side.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
So the simple question is, can
do it
women
all?
really
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it
yeah,
all?
I know. So, women can do it all, but why should she? Right? If men have the privilege to just go after their career, work for their career, just think about themselves and their growth, why can't women do that? Right? It's not like she can't do it all, but she doesn't have to. Sensitive men will understand that they need to share, whether it is the burden of household chores or taking care of the family, all of this along with her career. You see, that doesn't mean I'm putting down anyone who doesn't want to go out and work, right? It's a choice of the woman, whether she wants to go out to work or not. Now, when I think of it, my mother or her mother, when I asked my mom, she says she wanted to be a doctor, but she was not even told that she can be that. Okay? They all grew up thinking, okay, her whole purpose is she has to get married, go there. It's not wrong to do that. But did she have a choice? Did she choose to be a housewife? That's the question here, right? And if a woman wants to go out and work or stay at home, whatever it is, she can do it, but the men need to be supportive. Both have to do it all. It's not like can she or not. Both of them have to do it all. Share it so that the burden goes down. And both of them can concentrate on their career. Yeah.
The question was not to get beaten up, so I just asked, can women do it all? Because what I
Mr.
meant is,
Bhaskar,
can she
Dr.
take the
Bhaskar,
burden?
I was very appreciative of you for the questions that you people have put up and the very initiative that you have taken among people with a STEM background. this is a very important thing, because when it comes to policies and stuff, it's only government set up or an NGO. They keep thinking about women issues and gender issues. I really appreciate. I can totally see you are a feminist. So here it was just, and you should take that as a compliment.
Thank you.
I hope all of you are happy to be called a feminist. Is there anyone who don't want to be called a feminist? No? I'm so glad, because everywhere I go, men and women for the matter, girls and boys, that to youngsters, they'll be like, I don't want to be called a feminist. I was like, darling, you want equal pay for your work? Yes. You want freedom? Yes. You want to be treated equally without being judged as for your gender? Yes. This particular right was given to you by feminists. If you say no, I don't want to be a feminist, it's a disrespect to them and to your privilege that you're enjoying today. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who made this a privilege for us to have equal rights, he was a feminist, right? Otherwise, you think he would even think about women getting equal rights? The problem with the very understanding of feminism is, there is misogynists, right? The one who hate another gender, like the gender of the female gender. They are called misogynists. The same way there's another term, misandrists, one who hates men. Feminists are not the same. Feminists are those who believe in equal rights, whether it is men or women. Right? Feminists also believe gender inequality hurts everyone, men or women. Say the burden men get in taking care of the family, not to cry, this toxic masculinity that forces them, and the peer pressure of being toxic to feel manly, all of this feminism stands for them. So yeah, I just switched to feminism because I'm very passionate about gender issues. So
I could see the passion coming. So
Thank you.
anyways, I learned a lot. Shannon, over to you. Yeah.
I just want to say, Bhaskar, if you don't want the heat, don't invite an army officer to the panel session, man. Like, what do you expect? Yeah? All right. I'm just kidding. I think you brought up a really good point. I think that this question about having it all is as much of a male gender question as it is a female gender question, because here in India and across the world, we have such stereotypical roles for these genders that, I mean, that's why it becomes so difficult, because, and men too, I mean, we have a lot of men in the audience, have a lot of struggle that they grow up with expectations about, taking care of the family, getting a good job, taking care of the parents, making enough money. That's also equally difficult to bear. So when they're concentrating all on that, right, then all of the household stuff gets pushed over to the other typical gender, which is the women, right? So my friend of mine, her name is Neha Bagaria. She founded this organization called Herky, which is to increase women in the workforce. And she answers this question this way. She says, it's not a question to ask, can we have it all? It's, can we make it all? Because we have to change the system, right? The reason why this is so hard is because the system is screwed up because of these expectations. I mean, there's roles that are only for women, right? Nurses and teachers and things are predominantly at lower levels. They're women roles, right? Caretakers are generally women, and there's no need for that. Men can do this job just as well. So these gender roles, I think this particular question is, as you say, just it's equally a male stereotypical role question as it is a female role. And I think both genders have to fight against this because it's toxic for everybody in that way.
Interesting perspectives, Shweta.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of, Shannon, to her point that is as much for men as for women. I feel in the Indian context, there's much more expectation from women. At least, that's what happened. I think I would contextualize it, at least in my case. I'm slightly older to you all. So definitely I come from, slightly different generation wherein there was a lot expected and we were expected to abide by it also. Like today you have the kind of awareness to say that we don't need to do it all. We didn't have that awareness at that stage. So we were expected to take on increasing responsibilities. I remember a stage when I would cook breakfast, I would go to college, I would go to the, in between, Between classes, I'd go pick up some things from the market, take the vegetable basket to classroom, sit there, go back, uh, get home because the kids had to be taken to tuition, or I would tutor my younger kid. And so the list goes on. You were expected to take on these increasing roles, like, that you would be a good wife, a good mother, a good student, and then a good professional. Everything got added on. And what was the result of all that? Like, at some point in time, you'll burn out. And that did happen. And I'm being very frank about this because, I really believe, a lot of people wouldn't want to mention it, but I think it happens with the best of us, with most of us, that when you reach this level, uh, you know that you can't do this much more. When I see Durgashtami, they've shown Durga Devi with all her arms, and that's how a woman is supposed to be, handling multiple roles. I think it's unfair. It's too much expectation, from us. And believe me, I think after I started outsourcing certain roles, I got to cook, I got a driver. I mean to say, as so there are things that I thought, why am I doing all this? I don't need to have, a perfect house. I think to an extent, women also set a certain perfection level for themselves. That's where your excellence thing comes in. I want to excel at everything I do, be the excellent mom, the perfect host, or perfect at my job. Yes, I do need to do well on all fronts, but there are things that you can kind of, give a miss. And so I think the do it all complex definitely is there. At least in my generation, we did have it, but I've learned to deal with it. And I think I've learned to deal with it looking at, the younger folks, like, and Bhavya is so spot on when she says that, that you don't need to do that. And I got that from my daughter, in fact. Like, she said, Mom, I don't know why you're doing so much. So thanks for that question, though, Bhaskar. Really,
I,
really deep.
I just have one thing to add. Recently, you people might have seen this picture, a photograph which went viral, where a railway police officer, a lady, not a police officer, someone who takes care of the railway track, she's carrying a baby on her duty, right? That was glorified and romanticized so much that, oh, look at the woman, these are Indian women, they can do it all, she's on, like, imagine the pain her shoulders must be taking in carrying that baby, standing there hours together doing a job, instead of showing that empathy and doing something about it and questioning the Ministry of Railway to provide baby care for the child. These people at the topmost position are tweeting about it and saying, oh, look at the strength of Indian women. Bharatiya Nari, yes. When they glorify and romanticize this, the pain and the burden and the mental trauma that women go through, like, everybody else think, okay, if I have to be that typical Bharatiya Nari, I have to do it all. That's even a pressure by romanticizing and glorifying such things.
I guess so. Society is also playing a big role, right? So, from what Anupama was mentioning to the recent incident, what you're mentioning, these are different societies which is putting that pressure, which is building up as a burden on every single woman, right? So, that's why. So, society expects a lady to be in a certain way, so which is tying them up. The moment they deliver, they glorify them also in that way. Like a lady doing all the things. She's Devi. We don't even ask women, do you want to do all of this? Do you enjoy doing all of this? As men, I accept that we never had the courtesy to even ask women. I have not asked my mom till date, probably, right? So, do you like to do all of this, what you're doing? I might have said a couple of times saying, don't do it, I'll help you, but I've never asked her, which is a fact. I don't think so. Any man really goes and asks any woman, do you like to do all of this? Do you like going back home and cooking? Do you like coming here to work? Would you like to have a driver? No. We never ask. If she doesn't want to drive, like you don't want to drive. I guess that this is a society pressure which is pushing all of them to prove that they can all do it. Sorry.
No, no, don't be sorry. I think all of this boils down to the fact that both men and women are prisoners of patriarchy, right? It's the can women do anything? Yes, but should women do everything? No. And for very long, I think the narrative is all about empower women, and it's all about training and creating these reservations and pathways to get there. I don't think those are helping, because if they had helped you, you would have seen, you Indira Gandhi would have not been the only prime minister. You would have had more than that. You would have, this state we're currently sitting in has never had a woman chief minister. And the only role a woman politician gets in the state is as the minister for women and child development. As if women can't do anything else. So this patriarchal mindset has two sides to it. One is men need to stop expecting, but two is women need to start giving permissions to themselves for everything. I don't want to cook today. All right, I'm not going to cook today. Stop having that guilty conscience that, you know what, I haven't done this, so this is probably going to impact someone. Well, it's true that you need to feed your family, but that ties back into what Anupama said. When you start growing in your leadership positions, the more you buy back your time, the more you delegate work, the better it is for you, because you're not now just answerable to one person or two people, you're answerable to an entire organization. That said, there's just one more point I want to add here. I think there's a leader in all of our houses, unpaid, unacknowledged mothers, right? So to just relegate leadership positions to women sitting here and people like us at workforce, I think it is also important to recognize that if you just send your mother away for an unpaid leave, you forget paid, unpaid leave, just tell me if you can run your home for 2 days. Anybody in the audience who's confident that you can send your mom away for just 2 nights and you run the home seamlessly? She will come back to a heap of laundry, dirty dishes. The floor probably has no space on it because everything is dumped down there. And you have no idea where to buy your groceries. You don't know what the price of tomatoes is. You have no idea that a particular grocery is bought in liters and not in kilograms. Right? That is the extent some of you know, right? Very good. I'm so glad. But that gentleman next to you probably was shaking his head the other way around. So that is something, you know, the so-called unsung heroes are quite at home. In my mother's, in my mother's life, she had a choice, and she chose not to work. She chose not to work because she just felt like there were other things that she wanted. She started her career early. She wanted to kind of get into that space where she was more relaxed. That's her choice. So I think giving women the freedom to make those choices, and women themselves permitting their own selves to take that kind of freedom, that is your answer.
Very well said. So I am a true witness of that. What happens? Like I said, I've been brought up by a single parent. If mom goes out on a travel, usually it's a pilgrimage where she travels like for 3-4 days. There's a call every day morning I make to her, where is poha? Like, where is rice? I can't find chili powder. So, this is a real problem. We cannot live without the women in our life. We are so dependent. And again, coming back to the question, like you're mentioning, like Anupam also said, she decided to delegate a lot of stuff, what you're doing. A quick thought around that. A lot of women do not delegate because of two reasons. One, of course, they'll start thinking on what are others going to think if I give this task to somebody else. The second one is again seeking perfection. Most women do not want to give it off because they expect a certain level of perfection in the work which needs to be done. How easy or difficult is it to delegate the work what you have been doing? And most of the work what women do, be it at work front or the home front, they are more attached than women. More attached than men. So we are not so attached to a lot of work what we do. It's easy for us to delegate. So to be frank, right? So you are attached means there is a lot more expected out of the work which others would want to deliver. You would want others to deliver. How easy or difficult to delegate? Yeah.
It has to do with trust, not perfection. So let me put this into perspective. I just mentioned to you that both men and women are prisoners of patriarchy. Now, when you're in a leadership position, it's not just the men who don't acknowledge your leadership. The first thing any woman getting into a leadership position does, or is forced to do rather, is to assert her leadership. Because people are unwilling to accept it, especially when you're young. It's a double-edged sword. Oh, you're in a leadership position, you're a woman, you're also young. Do you really deserve to be there? Is it my fault that I got somewhere faster than you did? Can you penalize me for that? So that is a question you need to ask, and that's where the trust comes in, because it's not just men who don't accept you as a leader, but women start questioning you, because they're in their heads, they're tuned to working in a certain way. You look at everything from the way they behave around you, the way they report back to you, and then there's also this empathy factor. So women generally tend to be more empathetic. If one of my employees comes to me and says, oh, my child is sick, my first response is drop everything, go to your child. A man will say the same thing, but he will say it with a lot of grudge, and he will add that I still want this work done by 6 p.m. I wouldn't do that. I would step in and do it for her. Now, would she respect me for that? Is what I would expect, that you would respect me for that. Some people do, some people don't. Some people take that as an advantage. So the more you can trust someone, the more you would delegate. And because it takes time to build that value, it takes women longer to delegate. It's not the perfection bit. It's not as if we think we are the be all end all of it, the supremacists of everything. If I can do it, I'm sure the others, all the women in this audience, I'm sure they can do it, the men too. And so, one key part that I see where women do better is that we put in a lot of effort in training. So take Scientists and Co as an example. I started in 2016. Today, even as we're talking here at a government school in Rajaji Nagar, 4 of my girls are running a camp. I have no oversight over it. They will come back to me this evening and tell me this is how many people we trained, this is what happened in the camp, these were the lessons, these were the issues, and I come in and provide them the right resources to learn and do better the next time. So it takes time. It took me almost 4 years to train them, win their trust. They now own it. So you need to give them that space to grow, and it's not just true of people at a fresher level, but even for leaders. Don't give us training. Don't tell us how to get the job done. Just give us the space to be who we are, because the way we'll deliver goods is different from the way you deliver goods. You just have to accept it, because the outcome is the same.
So anybody else has thoughts?
I think we also heard this at the beginning. You mentioned that you're never just one thing. It's always tacked on. Like, I'm always a female scientist, right? I'm never just a scientist. I'm a female scientist. I'm actually a female foreign scientist right now, so I have like multiple labels. That's a pretty big burden, because I'm representing, well, now in my case, I'm representing an entire gender and the rest of the world. But I mean, like, it's that's where you can't, like you said, you can't fail. Because if you fail, if you complain, if you say I can't do this, I can't handle this, and it's true, we can't handle everything. You have to get drivers and things, because you just physically, there's not enough hours in the day to do everything. Then it's seen as a failure, not just of you, as it's a failure of all of the titles that you have, and the titles become increasingly more enveloping. Like, if you're a failure as a female, then you're failing 50% of the world's population. So I think there's an enormous pressure on us women to not announce that we're failing at something, even though any normal person cannot do everything, but we're still expected. And I don't think people actually know they don't really realize like how much a lot of women actually do in the day. I mean, even women themselves, like women in different positions, because a few years ago, just for fun, when I was still a professor, we have a lab blog, and I just blogged my day. I just really started, like, I woke up and I did the whole thing. I woke up, made coffee, made breakfast for my daughter, said goodbye to my husband, took my daughter to school, and I went through the whole day, and my list was like 60, 70 things wrong, because I was just writing what I was doing. I wasn't complaining, I wasn't saying anything, and people kept coming up to me. They're like, we had no idea how much you did, because I was also meeting students. I also had faculty meetings. I was also reviewing papers. I was also doing all the lab sciencey stuff. And then all of this personal stuff, making dinner, getting my daughter to go to bed. She was sick that day, all these things. So I think that that goes back to this gender norm issue. But also, I didn't even think I could complain, because I've been taught, you are the female scientist. I am privileged. I have this privilege, exactly, to be doing what I'm doing. Who am I to complain? Yeah. So I think that's right. Do you want to comment on that? Yeah. So I think that it's also all of what we've been saying, this expectation, and this, yeah, this pedestal almost that you're put on, especially if you're in a leadership position, that you are supposed to be just doing everything and you can't fail. And you can't get really angry because women don't get really angry. Yeah. And you cannot cry because women cry all the time. I mean, there's lots and lots of expectations when you interact with people. And I get angry and I cry. You know me, Bhaskar, I'm a very emotional person. And I'm very proud of that. But that's a very bad thing to be as a leader, right? You're not supposed to be emotional.
I guess these are the challenges what we really wanted to address and talk about, right? So very well put. Most of you have really touched upon the points where many of us who are growing in our careers, and especially the women sitting in the audience, who would want to take away a lot of opinions. Just getting back to some of the things, all of us thankfully are from the STEM background. We don't see a lot of women in the STEM background, at least in India. So while me as growing up, half of my class was women, and girls were really good in science and maths as compared, like from 6th to 10th, if I remember, the first rank holder was a girl, and I was always the second rank holder, lagging behind with a half of a marks. I always hated her for her skills in science and maths. But today she's a homemaker. She would have excelled. She would have become a scientist somewhere. Why is this happening? Why is STEM not getting that amount of a push? What should be done to change that?
I think I can state that in terms of women in STEM, um, what data again shows is that there's a very real leaky pipeline, as we call it, and it's that women in higher levels of science, especially it's BSc onwards, or your bachelor's onwards, women tend to drop out. And that's because of societal expectations. Largely because of that, at least in the Indian context, you're expected to marry at a certain age, you're expected to start a family at a certain age, and then coming back from there is a tough thing, and I also feel that it's an equity issue. A lot of women from say tier 2, tier 3 colleges not having access to resources, yeah, that's also a very real thing. And what have we done? I think at a foundation level, because of Kiran, there's a lot of emphasis on women in STEM. We internally within our company, we've promoted women in manufacturing. Manufacturing is traditionally seen as a male role, but what we did is we started an entire facility which is within Biocon Park. It's an all women's manufacturing facility. So we have women across all the roles, and this was definitely a huge win for us, and it's something that now we can replicate across our facilities here in Biocon, at Biocon Group. But also at a community level, how are we addressing this? We've started a Women in STEM initiative, and this is with the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad under the Office of PSA, as you know. And this looks at promoting scholarships, because mentoring is definitely there, it's guidance, but scholarship is an actionable thing, that you see here. So we're moving from guidance to real action. So we do support, women from tier 2, tier 3 colleges. So it's a cohort of both, bachelors and postgraduate women who are given mentoring. They're given industry internships. At the same time, they're given scholarships so that, and we have very real stories. This is the third cohort. We're starting one with the Bangalore Science Cluster, and this is coming in April now. And I'm just so thankful that we had this opportunity, to understand this problem, to do something about it, in a very tangible manner. But I think these are some of the steps that we could take. Tier 2, tier 3 colleges, just reach out, just help them reimagine what they could do, in terms of their career trajectory. I think that's from me, at least, from my perspective.
This is amazing. So
There need to be more services, I have to say, because it's one thing, and it's really great to get women at the lower levels, but one of the other reasons is that there's not enough childcare facilities. There's not time off for men to take time off to be with the kids. It always, whenever my daughter was ever sick, who gets called? I actually gave my husband's phone number because my husband for a long time was working from home. He actually could. They would never call him. They would always call me. I was in a lab. My lab was actually didn't even get reception half the time, so it was a safety issue why I had it. But they still would never call. They call him, right? these things are the things that need to change. There needs to be changes in the services available, because it's the entire environment around women that also forces them to drop out, because they simply don't have the facilities and the network available. If there's, if they're getting time off because they're having a child, then yeah, then they may lose. They may, especially if they're a scientist like myself, they may lose track of things, and they need some help getting back. And there are growing scholarships and fellowships that help women who've taken a career break. That's one. Another thing that has to happen is that the flexibility of working hours in non-academic jobs where there's a much more strict working schedule, this has to be increased so that women can take the time to go, pick up the child or whatever they feel they have to do, especially if their husbands are not even getting phone calls, and they still don't lose time on the job, right? So there's a lot of inflexibility in these systems that needs to change to allow women to actually do these jobs. And those are things, these are easy things. It's actually not, it's a little money, but it's not difficult to make flexible working hours. It's not difficult to make to create a childcare facility. These are tangible, easy things that can happen. And they're happening in various places, but it's not fast enough, and it's definitely not widespread enough in this country, especially, to allow more women to actually excel in their positions.
These things, I think, really make a difference, right? These are small things, but really make a difference. A scholarship dedicated for women, especially women who want to get back into space. A small crush in a workspace makes so much of a difference and so much of a comfort level for women. But
See, I'll talk to you specifically about chemistry, but it's applicable to all STEM subjects, more or less. So everybody's familiar with Professor Sir C.V. Raman?
of course,
Yes? The audience is almost half asleep. Everybody's heard Professor Sir C.V. Raman? Is he one of the most popular scientists of our nation? Would you believe that he had severe gender bias? Yes? Does everybody know the story of... Right. For those who don't, so Kamala Sohoni went to Professor C.V. Raman and said that she wants to enroll for a PhD at his lab. And he declined, the reason being, you will distract the men in my lab. And she protested, she wouldn't budge, she does everything possible. And then he says, all right, I'll give you a chance. But here's the deal, you cannot work at the same hours that the boys do. You'll have to work overnight. This is back in the days when after 6 p.m. women were not even allowed to step out of their homes. But she took it up as a challenge, and she completed her PhD, and she became the first woman to get a PhD from the Indian Institute of Sciences. Today we speak a lot about gender parity, etc. One woman's struggle has paved way for all us girls sitting here with a PhD, right? So it starts there, and in 2022, we commissioned a project at the Royal Society of Chemistry. We commissioned a project to understand why women don't progress in their careers, especially in chemistry. Let me give you the statistics. At the school, undergrad and postgrad level, the number or the ratio of girls to boys is almost 1:1. There is no problem up to the stage of masters. Then you come to PhD. In the last 5 years, even that ratio is nearing 1:1. Then comes the problem. That's when the real problem comes. Do you know what percentage of all postdocs in this country in chemistry are women? Any guesses? 8%. 8%. And that's the current data. And then if you look at the number of women in faculty positions across the country, it's less than 18%. It's roughly about 17.2%. So how many of you have heard of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research? It's the apex body for industrial research in the country. The first woman to be appointed as its Director General, Dr. Kalai Selvi. Which year was that? 2022. But when was this established? Way before independence. So that is the state of affairs. So we came up with a model to understand why this decline in numbers. We call it the academic valley of death. It's exactly like the startup valley of death. So up to PhD level, there is a lot of scholarships. There are certain services. and then you also aren't burdened by the work life balance. You're still young, you do your PhD. Now, after that, there are three main reasons why people drop off. The first is financial security. A job in STEM does not come with financial stability in the first decade. And all of us, I think, who've done any kind of STEM subject have faced that problem. There is a, except for engineering, everywhere else, there is a lack of financial stability and the number of opportunities. We are producing, the number of PhD students that graduate each year is upwards of 5,000. But how many postdoc positions do we have? How many faculty positions do we have? So where are you expecting these people to go? Of course they're going to drop off. So they're not disappearing on their own. We haven't provided them with the opportunities in job market. And then those 8 to 10% that actually come into the system, what happens to them is they get married. And then here comes the bias. Every time you recruit a woman, and I think anybody who's been through that process will know it, and I've faced this myself. The first question you get asked is, are you married? How does that have anything to do with my competence in science? When will you, it's not just stopping at are you married, when will you get married? Because they're calculating, अच्छा ये 5 साल काम करेगी उसके बाद चली जाएगी because इसकी शादी हो जाएगी, then what will happen? She'll have a kid, she'll not come back. And it is also true. It is also true because a lot of women are pressured by the family to drop off. They're like, there's no financial stability. Paid leave has been introduced now recently. So a lot of them were told, you get nothing out of this. This is a thankless job, so just drop off. And you understand, right, in a lab-based science, you are practically living and breathing there. Your friends are those rabbits and mice in the cage. Yeah, you're spending more times there than you are outside. Like aldehyde is fragrance to you. Now, when you have to live a life like that and dedicate all of yourself to it, it has to be rewarding. That recognition is not there. There is a bias in recruitment, in retention, and in promotion, which is why we go around in this vicious cycle. And then the last point I'll make here is the systems themselves are not adopted. So after Kamala's case, Professor C.V. Raman was so open to taking women students that it became normalized. But what everybody forgot was that you have to tweak the system to allow the women to come in. I have visited over 250 campuses in the last, I think, 5 years in India. I can tell you, at least on the top of my head, I can think of at least 20 such campuses that don't still have a bathroom for girls in every building. You have to run from one building to the other just to use the washroom. And then in a chemistry lab, in one lab that is probably this size, you've got about 50 people working because they want more people coming in, more people researching, more paper, more publication, right? And then the fumes are running around. The men are all right. All the women there have PCOS and 3 of them miscarried. So this kind of hazards that men are insensitive to because they don't feel it is felt by women. Now who's going to talk about that? That's where your problems are lying. They're very ingrained, in-depth. It'll take a long time for us to fix it. And the first thing you need to fix here is the leadership. Because so long as you don't fix a leader who's willing to actually go the mile and say, I'm not just going to have a creche, I'm going to have one which is safe, clean, and maintained to a standard that is acceptable by the parents, then it's no use.
What are your thoughts?
So you asked us about STEM. I'm sure they're more qualified to speak about STEM because they're from that background. Because my engineering, that was the last I spoke with a community of scientists and stuff. So Shweta did a very valid point when she said, at the primary school level or even, master's level, women are there in the same ratio. How many of you know Kannada here? Okay, most of you. Whenever there are like results, 10th board results, do you remember the headlines that come every year on TV channels? Hendu makkala melugai. Girls perform well, right? And later, now when Anupama ma'am was giving statistics, why is it that women are not in positions of power equally, if not at a higher hand? Did our potential just stop at 10th standard? No. The difference is When you write your board exams, you all write the same, write answers to the same question paper. You all read the same textbooks, right? The parameters are the same based on which they're testing your potential. But when you come out of school, whether it is at the higher education level or later also, the parameters differ. Whether it is in politics or even in business, financial stability, like she mentioned, matters. And like I said, the leadership role set for men, that matters. It's not the same. It's not the level playing field for everyone out there. And of course, intersectionality comes into question here, because it's not just women, it's not just gender. It's even your economic status, your caste, your religion, your geography. I mean, where you're from. All of this matters in, what kind of opportunity knocks your door. All of this matters. Like, of course, that is what social justice is all about. Your future should not be decided based on your background, whether it's your caste or a gender or your religion or where you're from or your economic status. Your future should be decided based on your potential and your hard work. That is how, whether it is a politician. And Shweta also made a very good point. In fact, I asked one of the top leadership the same question. Like, why is it that women are only given Ministry of Women and Child Development in Karnataka? Are they not capable of handling finance? They're like, oh, that's like the most powerful, right? They make faces. I'm like, why not? Can't we handle that? Like right now, the central minister is a female, right? The finance minister. That's one point. And there was someone, we were just speaking about this 33% reservation bill, right? Which is pending for the past 2 decades. And right now they passed it, but they put a condition of delimitation, which has a lot of complication. Someone was just asking me, how many women should be, according to you, in the parliament? So I just said, like, 460 out of 543 should be women. They were like, what? That's not acceptable. So I'm like, so you're okay with 460 men being MPs there, but you are not okay with 460 women being MPs. That's normalized when you have 460 men as MPs. So I just said, for me, the right number is 50%. I just wanted you to understand your bias there. But at least give us 33% reservation. Right? Like, it's the same in all the fields. I'm just speaking for political field because that's where. And there was someone, a friend of mine working in a software company. He was telling me, oh, why do you keep saying all this? There are so many women working in my office as well. Women are coming out today. Like, how many percentage of women are working? Well, maybe not equal numbers, but definitely there are a lot of women. So I asked, how many women there are from villages? Do you have men who are born and brought up in village and still working in your company? He said, yes. Do you have women working like that? They said, no. So you do not have equal representation. Like, if I'm sitting on a table, if there is the most powerful table which take decisions, how do we expect men to understand the barriers and the needs of women and make policies on that if women don't represent there? Whether it is in a corporate field, whether it is a business field, whether it is in a political field, right? So yeah, when it comes to that, these are the barriers. The parameters are different. That's the reason we do not have women, whether it is in STEM, whether it is in politics, whether it is in business, or yeah.
I think I'll just add a point here. See, when you look at India, it's an agrarian country. And if you look at all the manual labor that gets done in farms, 80% are women. There are several studies to reinforce these numbers. It varies a little bit each year, but roughly around that figure. But then when you look at these white collar jobs, I think the report is from 2022, the World Economic Forum report. It says that in India, in the top senior managerial positions, only 9% of those positions are held by women, whereas total percentage of women in white collar workforce is 20%. So why not at the leadership level 20%? That's my question here. So can we apply the reservation model, whether it be politics, with due respect, or whether it's in, corporates or elsewhere? I think this notion of reservation needs to go away. I think what we need to do is not have a quick fix. If you have a leaky pipe, don't just, add a little bit of tape and try to fix it. Pull the pipe out, put in a new fresh one that will actually be durable. That is what I would say, which means to say, yes, sure, as a stopgap solution, have the reservation, but can you not look at more, um, you know, the deeper aspects of it? As in, are you creating enough opportunities? Are you creating a safe work environment? Are you actually listening to women at workspace? Because women at workspace get talked to, they don't get listened to. And funnily, the men get listened to. It should be the other way around. Talk to men. In fact, in all gender sensitization workshops, in discrimination, bullying, and harassment workshops, you see 100% of the audience is women. I say it should be 100% men. You can't go to the victim and say, stop the perpetuator. You got to talk to the people who are actually, the violators need to be addressed. So listen to the women, talk to the men, and fix the problem. And for women themselves, I think you should stand up. It's a really difficult job. And all three of my co-panelists, I have immense respect for them, because I know the kind of battles you have to fight just to get there. And equally important, they would have all had the prudence to choose which battles to fight. So developing that sort of a skill comes innately. So coming back to the same thing that Bhavya said, when she said, why not the finance portfolio? It's the same in corporates. How many CFOs are women? How many women actually are allowed to manage budgets and take those decisions? And when I was first given that role, somebody very senior to me asked, can you handle this alone? Because I'm not going to give you a team. I said, no problem. I've got 2 personal assistants. Presence of mind and confidence. Unpaid, they work 24/7. We'll get it done. Right? So give yourselves the permission to be who you are. And I beg to differ with Bhavya on one more account. You are an engineer. You are an engineer and a politician.
Yeah.
Why do you want to shy away from being?
No.
Because you've put in those efforts.
I
You've
meant,
earned a
I
degree.
meant you people are more exposed to that career
Fair.
in STEM, so that you can speak better about it.
Fair.
But I have 2 things to make here. So the first thing is, you spoke about reservation, right? You're all aware that in local bodies there is 33% reservation, right? 50% for women. Are you all aware? At the corporations and panchayat level and zilla panchayat level, there is reservation for women. All right? You really think without this reservation, that many women, the people would even get used to seeing women in leadership position and contesting elections without reservation? Even today, all those positions would be with men. Yes, there are a little bit of negatives there, like, proxy candidates. Women get elected, but their husbands and their children or a son or their fathers do the job. I don't deny. But at least the next generation women are looking at them, they're getting educated. They'll feel like, you know what? I have a chance to contest elections, to stand for elections, and I will, take my own decisions, right? So reservation is something I differ with you, because these are the barriers that we face, and even those barriers need to be removed, and reservation is one of the ways to do that. And coming to, you made a very valid point about, manual workers or even construction work or agriculturists. Mostly they are women. So there is this term called gender jobs, right? Most of the scientists, it's expected men to take those positions, or business. You can see businessman is what I keep correcting people every time they say chairman, businessman, or I'm like, why don't you use business person, chairperson? Because that's designed for men, right? Like if you see teaching jobs or any low paying jobs, women dominate there. But higher paying jobs and powerful positions, men are there. That definitely needs to be changed, whether it is with reservation or not. Women needs to take 50% place there. Do you guys agree?
I guess
I have a question for you and the audience. I'm so sorry about this. And I well articulated. How many of you have heard of Aruna Asaf Ali? Does the name ring a bell? One person. Bhavya, you should know this. You know, yes. Who was the first woman chief minister in India? Sucheta Kriplani. And no less than the state of Uttar Pradesh. There were no reservations at that point in time. We have built ourselves into a space where we allow a certain kind of domination, and it's not a male domination, it's a domination of power and it's a domination of finance. I think I agree with her points that to enable better role models, you need to have reservations, but they come with accountability and filtrations. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
No, this has been wonderful. So rather, check. So this has been wonderful, rather eye-opening, I must say, right? So before I summarize or get into final thoughts, opening up to audience if you have any questions.
Yeah, just adding to the reservations bit, do you think companies too should have some policies or some way to be more inclusive of women in terms of hiring or maintaining those numbers? Taking ARTPARK itself for an example, we're about 100 people here and there's 18 women. So just want to understand what are your thoughts on it in terms of what companies can do to be more inclusive of this?
So at
Open to the back.
So, the more diverse the workforce is, the better the performance, right? Everybody will bring their own value to the table, and there is this diversity policy that the companies already follow, right? I definitely believe it's very important to bring in more diverse community, including the gender, not just gender, like gender or economic background, because everybody has very valid. It's only when you see a person's capacity that everyone here is equally potential. Just that they're not here because of their barriers that they're facing. When you see through that lens, you will not shy away from reserving a position to women. Only if you believe women can't do this, that is when you are against this reservation. If you are for social justice and if you believe every person born is equal, then but understand, you're sensitive enough to understand that these people are facing this barrier. So we need to make it easy for them. Like, yes, there are chief ministers, there is one prime minister, but can we just fantasize that and keep quiet? Where is the next prime minister, female chief minister after that? Today, how many chief ministers are females here? That's because they were a little privileged, or either they have a background other than Mamata Banerjee. Every other chief minister had some other man backing them. Right? No, we need this because, like I said, you need to believe every person is born equal. They are equally potential. Only when you give them an opportunity to contest, opportunity to sit on the table, does their talent can come out. So yeah, I definitely believe. But to force a private company or a private organization to bring in a policy like this is a very Herculean task. But definitely in politics, if we have leaders with a lot of willpower, who is very passionate about gender issues, they can definitely force them. That's not a big deal at all. They can bring in some or the other policy which they will accept, give them some, perks to these companies. You have 50% women in your workforce, this is the perk you get, whether it is in tax rebate or anything like that. There's always a way to bring in. But because it's only the first time that matters. Once someone does that, and they see a difference in the success of that organization, everybody will be encouraged to do the same.
I'm sorry, could I have some very specific things that I thought about? you mentioned unconscious bias, and I wanted to actually touch on that for this question because I think this is something that every corporation, every school, every place can do. I mean, nobody wants to be hired because they're a woman. Like, does anybody want to be hired because they're wearing a blue shirt or like because of, like what does that have to do with me being a scientist? Nothing, right? But it's shown over and over. There's been so many studies that show if you show somebody two CVs, okay, and they're exactly the same, okay, but one has a woman's name or a woman's picture and one has a man, they will choose the man, right? So there's easy ways of dealing with this. One is get people's pictures off the CV. Get people's, also dename it, right? Because names often have specific genders associated with it. Those are easy things you can do. When people are going through CVs, just go through the qualifications. It doesn't matter whether they're a man or a woman. When you're actually having people come and speak or having any sort of representation, pay attention to how many women you have. There's also lots of ways where we don't pay attention to gender. For example, in sciences, I always make my students go through the references list in their bibliography, and I say, how many women are running the labs that you have referenced? And then I see how biased it is. And I say, go back and find more references from women, because references for scientists are how we get promotions. So it actually affects the entire system. There's a lot of ways. These are not tough ways. I think changing the system is hard. Getting people to accept that, there should be 470 MPs, I think that's a hard thing. But these are easy things, and there's unconscious. And this, I will say, this is bias for both men and women. Both men and women do this. We women also tend to invite less women. We women tend to also look at male CVs more. So this is actually not a gender issue. This bias exists, and this is something that is easy to do. And actually, since we're here at ARTPARK, I can actually say this is where actually sometimes AI can help, because AI can actually be involved in this, not to choose people. Okay, I don't think we should get rid of humans at that level, but it can help with this process of sorting through applications, getting rid of names, getting rid of information, and then presenting them in a way that allows recruiters to look at them more from the qualifications rather than from a gendered lens. These are easy. These can be done today, right? So I think changing the system, making things everywhere where we're looked at, for how competent we are and not for our gender, that's going to take a lot longer. But I think we have the technological capabilities to do a lot to avoid that. We can have AI look for us, have it screen everything. What is the percentage of women that are being referred to? What are the percentage of women on committees or in departments? So all that can be done.
Great. You had
I think it would be amiss if I didn't mention that from a company level, at least in terms of listed companies, there is a definite push for DEIB policies. So as you know, most of us have to fulfill ESG reporting, as is called, environment, social, and governance. So within that, in the social dimension, a definite area of focus, something that gets talked across all the boards. At least, see, I sit out of 3 boards right now, and everywhere the constant refrain is, how are we doing in terms of diversity? There's a definite leadership push towards this, and in our company more so, because obviously Kiran ma'am is helming the affairs of the company, and so diversity is a huge goal, and it is being pushed through such policy kind of measures, such as just meeting your DEIB goals is a very big aspect for HR. Today at Biocon, 40% of our pool of scientists comprises of women scientists, but I'm hoping that will increase. And it's a big goal for our HR folks too. Overall, we're at around 17%, but we've taken on very bold goals, because as I said, manufacturing, for a pharmaceutical space such as ours, it's not easy. And as you said, it's all about, okay, have we created the system to support women as they want to enter into manufacturing roles? Is there a creche that's good? Is there paternity leave in case, something is happening? So all those kind of things, and I think it's a whole ecosystem of services which comes into play in making those goals come alive and prosper. So that's just some points
great.
from me.
So any more questions from the audience? Yeah, you have.
I have a question for you, Anupama ma'am. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
So I'm trying to refer to the days when you were starting to grow in the leadership positions, and I'm assuming you also face some kind of imposter syndrome. And if there were mostly male colleagues around you or seniors around you, who did you confide in? I'm sure any human needs some kind of support to grow. So, who did you, confide in, or who did you value as a trustable bond? And how do you, make those evaluations? Like, okay, I will slowly make this kind of a. Everybody needs a network to bank on to grow. So how did you go through that process?
Yeah, no, I think that's very real, no? The imposter syndrome. I mean, when I got my first leadership role, I was like, what's happening? Are they really sure about this? And is that, and will I be able to live up to their expectations? Am I really qualified? I had a PhD and yet I didn't feel qualified enough, and but then I think my biggest supporters were my family to a certain extent. Like, that was definitely there. They believed in my abilities. But then I think the formal networks, they also help. Like, there were a lot of folks who were part of my team, other teams, so cross-functional teams, who came up and said that, hey, we really believe you can do this, and we're so happy that you've reached this, level. So I think it's a bit of both. It's both your formal, informal networks. You're not able to confide openly sometimes in a formal network because, you don't want them to know that you're feeling this insecurity, you're feeling, how do you expose your vulnerabilities, right? It's not easy. At this stage, I can tell you that I went through that, but initial years it was very tough. Like, I always keep thinking, am I really fit for this role? And it's only uh, I think in the past 5 years that I felt more comfortable. I know it's taken me the longest of times, but yeah, that's my story, and I hope it's not going to be the case for all the women sitting out here. You should all feel very comfortable where you all are.
Are you on LinkedIn? I have a question. Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, do you, when you get a job description, do you ever get a job description that says looking for X position and these are the qualifications? Okay. So, they did a study, and on average, what percentage of do you know this? Do you guys all know this study? It's a great study. Do you know what percentage of qualifications the average man shoots for to apply for a job?
I think between 40 to 50%.
It's about 60. Okay. Do you know what average level of number of qualifications and percentage that a woman will apply for the job? It's 100%. Okay. So it's not just imposter syndrome. It goes back to the beginning. We hold ourselves to such high levels. Like, we don't even apply to positions unless we are literally like God's gift to that position. Okay. And and that's a completely different perspective between the genders right now. So number one is we have to start being a little bit more realistic. So all of you out there, both men and women, men are already doing it half the time, but women out there, yeah, apply to a job. You got half the qualifications, apply to it. Because you actually don't realize how many qualifications you actually have until you actually get into the position. So
I have one more question. Sorry if I'm taking too much time. But this will relate to all the young women here, because what happens is, women younger than me come to me for mentoring. But when I start telling them, oh my God, you have so much potential. Your CV is strong. You should apply for these positions. Then slowly, after a few weeks, a few months, I realized that they have other priorities. They're in the mid 20s and they are now prioritizing getting married and settling down. And now career starts to take a backseat. And I feel like, okay, I am in a position where I can give them, like, show them, like, see, these are the opportunities. Why are you thinking of, like, it's okay, get married, but then also you can keep trying for these opportunities. Why is that a factor in here? But no, they're more invested in being the best wife and being the best partner. And I'm thinking, like, what do you feel when you see situations like this? I am new to this. Like, I've been going having this experience for the last few years, and I feel that sometimes I feel bad, and sometimes I feel, I should support them whatever their decision is. If they want to have a great marriage and be a great partner, yes, I should probably be cheering up for them. But instead, a part of me feels bad, like, why are we losing this great potential into, just maybe they have their own priorities. If they don't want to prioritize career, that is also fine, I guess. But does it hurt a little bit when you see that happen?
What's your shoe size? It's a serious question. What's your shoe size?
5.
Okay, so mine's also 5. Shannon? Oh gosh, is there somebody? What's your shoe size? The gentleman in blue? Yeah. Sorry? 9. So if I gave your shoe size 5 to him, would he accept it? I mean, he would probably accept it. Have a girlfriend? Shoe size 5? Oh, great. So he's going to use it somewhere. That's honestly how your mentoring cascades. You put some good into the world, it'll go around. You don't know how it might go around. You don't know when it might go around. You seed an idea today, it will not. You're into gardening. You seed something. It takes a few weeks for the sapling to come out, and then a few years before the tree is out there. Don't stop mentoring. That is what I would say. People give up very quickly, and this is for both men and women, right? Don't stop mentoring. Continue that, because you have no idea the kind of impression you've made in them. They might not, people have different paces of thinking. It comes back to them at a later stage in life. It'll hit them that, I was told this by my mentor, I don't know, 10 years ago. Probably I should have done that. And it is true. All of us want to do the best. It's not just the women. I think men also want to do the best. You don't just want to do the best, you want the best. You want the best husband, you want the best father, the best teacher, the best. So in that light, when you want everything to be the best, put yourself out there for it. Because then all these, whether it's corporate, politics, or elsewhere, the reservation question doesn't arise. When you're out there doing things, because today you may not be recognized, but you will be. And the rewards of hard work is always sweeter, as opposed to climbing on pedestals that kind of really devalue you. Are you just being promoted because you're a woman? Are you being just recruited because you're a woman? Are you being given an opportunity because you're a woman? Are you going to feel good about yourself? Perhaps if you're somebody who's got merit and want to get somewhere and actually driven by making an impact on someone, I think you will be very dissatisfied that you couldn't actually climb the ladder yourself. It is very common that you will have your support systems, you have your networks, that's important. But I think instead of taking a shortcut, giving it that time, that effort, the rewards are always sweeter.
I think your point was that you mentor ladies, who may leave on account of, say, they're getting married or they want to start a family. Was that your question?
I portrayed the situation first. So first they come asking, like, if you get to know of some opportunity, what is the way to,
Correct.
get better in
So
the career?
how can you help them continue their journey, essentially, right?
Yes, I try to show them that, having a family does not need to, you don't need to choose.
Correct. Yeah.
Because, a large part of our culture still will promote the idea that if you don't have a family and have,
No, absolutely.
then you're missing out.
I get your point,
Yes.
and so what, at least in my experience, what I have done is I have spoken to HR and I've got them a flexi working hours, like, in the sense we say that you can work from home during the duration of your, end of your trimester or even after the baby is born. So that way it's easier for them to come back. Like, at least they're not taken a gap.
These are students who are freshly graduating.
Okay,
masters,
for students,
masters graduate,
Yeah.
and now they're seeking, like, if I should do a PhD, and I'm showing them, these are, you can go abroad and you can have these many opportunities, or you can enter the corporate. And then after 2 months, I see that, now they are slowly actually getting prospects of marriage, and slowly their priorities have deviated. I'm actually talking about that point where we were talking about the leaky pipeline.
Yes.
And this is the point, and I'm seeing, okay, in front of my eyes, I'm seeing that happen, and there's nothing I can do about it.
So, I think, like you had said, I think the leaky pipeline, or not losing women out to marriage and other obligations. One part is consistent mentoring. I think there needs to be formal and informal networks, which the women can lean in on and kind of decide, okay, yeah, that I can have, parallel priorities. I won't call them competing priorities. They're not competing. They don't compete. I think these are different life goals, but somehow they need to make sure that they're able to go along both the paths. And I think that's something that we've tried to put into this program. This is just a third cohort. And what we've seen is that many of the women continued in their PhD journeys, and that's been the best, I think, learning for us in the past two cohorts. Many of them, instead of they continue their PhD, or they've gone on to real higher managerial roles, in different organizations. So I would say it's a combination of these things, I would say.
Don't stop mentoring. That's the only advice. Because you know how you feel disappointed that you've put in the effort and they've genuinely shown interest, but then for whatever reasons they've had to drop off at that point in time. The same way, if you stop mentoring, there will be others who probably have heard that there is a mentor here. I can go seek help. If you stop, I know it's discouraging, but I think perseverance.
Don't feel disappointed or discouraged at all. There are a ton of women out there, and men and women both. If I know that there is a path, I will obviously show them. That's not at all. I do feel that I can see the leaky pipeline in front of me and I can't do anything about it. That's the thing. Only thing.
Can I know your name?
Sri Datta. Sri Datta.
Srilata.
Sri
First of
Datta.
all, I really Sri
Datta.
Sri
Datta.
Sri Datta. Okay. So first, I want to appreciate you. Like for such a young age, you actually said you want to mentor young women. You have done that, and you used a word like it really hurts to see them, not take up this opportunity. That just shows how much you care. Really appreciate that. Um, I know I've been there and I know how it feels. You see there's so much potential in someone and you just see that they're not coming out and doing this job that you are very passionate about. Yes, of course. But of course, it's their choice. But the second part, you have to make sure that you have given them all the necessary advice. Like tell them the importance of financial independence, if not anything else, right? Tell them how their potential is going to go waste. So it doesn't have to be like either this way or that way. They can get married and still continue. You can just show them these options. That is all you can do, of course. But like Shweta said and like ma'am said, don't stop mentoring, because especially in STEM, we need more female role models and mentors for encouraging women into STEM department. I really appreciate that.
Right, this has been great. This has been really wonderful to have all of you. I'm sure there are multiple questions more. I can see hands going up. I was about to pull them up seriously, because it is more important that men ask these questions, because we have a lot of questions. I of course have a lot of questions. I've already asked a lot of them. I'm not going to ask any more, but open if any men have questions to ask. Can somebody pass the mic?
Hi, my name is Jackson. I work here for Yanindria. Yeah, so I have a cousin who did geology. So when she took the course, I thought that it is quite rare and there are no opportunities to work in that field. And then her decisions made me feel proud that she left the country to pursue her master's in geology, and then she got a work, and the kind of work that she does is pretty impressive. Every day a chopper comes to pick her up and go to the site and come back. And now the question is here, if the same course is done, there are no job opportunities.
That is precisely what we were talking about. No, but no, you go first.
So this is not a question of gender. This is a question of a department not getting jobs. Whether a man is in that place or a woman is in that place, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is the
So you need-
opportunities available here in India if there are similar courses done?
That's a question that you should be asking your professors, and if anyone here
No,
wants to answer
the
that.
short answer to that is it's not just geology. There's a lot of other what you call as the less popular sciences where you don't have enough opportunities. So back in the 90s, when you were a geneticist or a biotechnology was still famous. I think it had more to do with like rare disease, genetics, and other things like that. people would not know what to do with those degrees. And then there came a boom in the IVF sector, and they were hiring people who had genetics background and molecular biology background left, right, center. But again, question is, are those the right places to hire these people? You just need technicians there. So when you come up with something that's less popular, you have two options. One is go where the opportunity is, but come back to create a niche for yourself here, because there are many people like you who require that support. And then there's always a gratification that you've come back and introduced something new. So my own case, so the Bhaskar mentioned two of the hats that I wear. The third hat I wear as is the advisor to the government of Karnataka on AMR, antimicrobial resistance. So in India, there is hardly, I think there's three of us who are actively in academia, but also working in the policy sector with the government. So we bank on evidence-based science to create policies. So when I started off my BSc here in 2008, such an opportunity was just not there. In fact, I didn't even know what it meant. For me, policy was life insurance policy. The car, the one you get for your car, vehicles, this, that. That's all was policy. So when I was doing my PhD, because my PhD was more in respiratory medicine, lung biology, there are aspects of public health that come in. So your knowledge widens. And then you start thinking, what am I going to do with this? Because in the Western world, all policies are data or evidence driven. Are we doing it in India? Is it unknown in India? No. It is known. Are we doing it at a very low scale? Is it systematized? No. So for me, that became a driver to relocate and say, all right, I'm going to try and do this. It's an uphill battle. I'll give it to you right away, because you won't have support systems irrespective of your gender. You have no role models. You have no mentors, because nobody knows how to mentor you. You're neither in science nor in policy. The policy people will push you out and say, you go do science. The science people will say, you're moved into policy, go there and stick there. That's the time when I, would go to his office and practically badger him. I want that data, no matter what. Takes a while, but once you establish your credibility, I didn't start off as an advisor to the government. I just started off as a regular academic does, doing my papers. But then I made sure that whatever research I did, whatever output I had was relevant and relatable. So scientists often forget that it's very important to communicate what they do. Storytelling is very important in science as it is in any other form of art. Science and art are not supposed to be looked at as two separate entities. I can't go down to somebody who's non-scientific and tell them that, oh, the gene BRAC does this. It means nothing to them. I can't go to them, and so a lot of my friends, I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot to order falcons. One of my friends said, any biologists in the room? Do you know what falcons are? Not the birds. For us, falcons are tubes. That's my jargon, that's my language. So in biology, we use a lot of these tubes that you incubate your liquid in, etc. So there's a very famous company that's called Falcon. And I would normally say, oh, I have to order a falcon. And then my friend's thinking, why is she ordering a bird? And where would you order a bird? Amazon. So the language needs to be fine-tuned. So don't wait for somebody to come and create the system. Go find the opportunity, level yourself to the global standards. If possible, come back and try and at least disseminate that mentorship and knowledge which you lacked.
Can I just say a very quick soundbite? It's very quick. So if there aren't opportunities, that's an opportunity to create the opportunity, right? I had the same thing happen, right? At the beginning, I told my story that I didn't see a way to work with others as a scientist. So I founded a network, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that's the easiest option, okay? This has been really, really hard, okay? But sometimes that stares you in the face, like, okay, there's not any opportunities for geologists. That's an opportunity to create a company, perhaps, an NGO, an organization where geology can be used to provide science-based data. Geology is super important right now with climate change going on, I can tell you. So there's a lot of chances. So when you guys have this blockade, also look at it as an opportunity to create something new. So that's just a quick advice.
Guess there are many more questions for sure. I can see some hands going up here and there. We are way out of time. So you can bump into the speakers after the panel and sure ask your questions, but Before that, big round of applause for the panel here, please. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time out. Thank you very much for educating all of us. So, to summarize, such a session is very, very difficult. But what I've done is I've just put together 5, 6 words which came into my mind while I was trying to summarize all of this. One of the things when we spoke about leadership was responsibility, right? So, leadership is a very broad term. What really matters is responsibility, which is gender neutral. So you're a man, women, or whomsoever you are, but responsibility is the thing what you will drive with. So that will make a difference. The next one is representation, which is really, really important. Both me being a man, ensuring there is representation from women, and women being women, ensuring there is representation for their own community is very, very important. So representation is another word which really came out. Third one is understanding, which we really lack. Men understanding women, women understanding men, or your colleagues understanding your own growth or your problems is a big problem, which also stood out while we are talking. So understanding, reshaping the spaces where we work in. I'm not just talking about the infrastructure or the buildings or whatever, how we are structured as an organization, from HR policies, a lot of things what we discussed, right? It is very important today to reshape all these spaces. Inclusive policies. So all of us spoke about inclusive policies. How do you bring in these inclusiveness when we are drafting the policies itself? When a lot of these decision makers, patriarchal societies you mentioned, because a lot of these decision makers across the table are men, subconsciously we might all incline towards making policies which might favor that group of people. It is very important to have those representations on those tables and bring in those inclusive policies which we discussed about. Another thing which came out more during the question and answer session is standing up and lifting others while we are walking. While as an achiever, when all of us are walking, especially you women are leading from front and struggled all your life and you are walking forward, what it also matters while standing up is taking along and lifting up. So that's very important for the next gen to take others along while they're walking. And of course, the most important thing which most women forget, including my mom, is it's very, very important to love yourself. It's very, very important to prioritize yourself. While you're giving it all to everybody, do consider to love yourself and prioritize yourself. Thanks again, and all respect to all women. Thank you. Happy Women's Day.